Are you ready to take your organization to the next level and become a game changer in your industry? Then look no further. Welcome to your Yokai Business Show, where we bring you the world's top business thought leaders to share their secrets to success, from leadership development to finance, marketing, self-development, human resource management, and much, much more. Our guests reveal the strategies, tactics, and mindsets that have made them so successful. So let's dive in and learn from the best in the business. Hello and welcome back. Man, I'm so pumped to have you here listen today because my guest is somebody who is truly helping individuals and business owners and companies get what the most out of life. And let me ask you a question. Are you ready to get that wild success in your life? If you are, you're in the right place, because what I've discovered is Kelvin Coyles has the ability of showing you how to do that. Kelvin, thank you so much for joining me here on the show for the first time.
Thank you so much for having me. And Joe, thanks for being with me.
Incredible. Also with me is my dear friend Joe Paulo. Many of you would have listened to our conversation a few weeks ago when we were talking about sales. Joe is helping me in this episode. So you will get to hear Joe not only in this episode, but in many other episodes to come because Joe is one of the superstars we love here on the show. Kelvin, listen, man, tell us that big wow statement you have, or the statistic that you have that a lot of people love to hear from you all the time from all over the world.
Yeah, we asked me before the show, and I'm grateful to be here. Thank you, by the way. One thing that always blows me away is for a business audience that we're trying to create success financially. And what's a really staggering statistic across Australia, where I live, in the UK, where many of you are at, is that 91% of people are never going to be able to retire. And when I heard that statistic, it really grabbed my attention. I thought, why is that? And for me, I believe that comes down to three things: having a vision, having internal alignment, and a proven strategy. And so what we're going to focus on today, and what I hope to deliver for all of you in the next sort of 30, 45 minutes, is how do you break free of your limitations and live life on your own terms and achieve the success that you're looking for. So that's really my scope for us today. And that's what I'm looking forward to trying to deliver for you in the next sort of half an hour.
Love that. Let's figure out how we can help the 91% really get there faster.
Yeah.
Well, with me today is Kelvin Coyles, who is a world-renowned personal transformation expert, CEO of the Wild Success, and a trailblazing thought leader in the field of leadership and personal growth, with a mission to help individuals unleash their full potential. That's you and me, and achieve success beyond our wildest dreams. Kelvin has positively impacted the lives of over 200,000 clients across 80 countries. And one thing I love about Kelvin, like many of you knows, he's a 3-time best-selling author, an award-winning entrepreneur, and a self-made multi-millionaire. And with me, ladies and gentlemen, is Kelvin, and I can't wait to dive deep into what it takes to create wild success. Now, Kelvin, before we dive deep into all that you talk about, I want to know, because at the age of 22, or maybe just after you finished university, you were $40,000 in debt, and something unique happened there. You found yourself volunteering, working with Chris, an extremely successful individual in the world of transformation. Talk to me about the events that were happening during that time, which has led to you becoming who you are today.
Yeah, well, thank you for the question. And UK, as you say, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right? That's right. There I was at 22 years old at university, big aspirations, but really no plans. I had no idea what I was doing. And I was running a nonprofit organization at the time. I had about 200 staff working for me, but I wasn't making any money. And I had these big goals and dreams and meant to be studying for an exam. And turns out I see this email come through from a world leader in personal transformation, neuro-linguistic programming, life coaching, business. This is a guy that had done about $100 million in global sales, Christopher Howard. Now, I'd never met Chris before, but I knew of him through the industry. And I watched this webinar. At the end of the webinar, he says, hey, if you would like more support, if you want to become a coach, book in a call with my team. I do. And then I end up having a call with him directly. And this is like if you don't know Chris Howard, to put it into context, it would be the equivalent of you booking in to speak to Tony Robbins' team and you speak to Tony Robbins himself. It was that big of a deal. And I've since met Tony. He's a wonderful guy as well. Both of them are amazing in the industry. And so I get on this call with Chris, and Chris does his pitch, tries to sell me this $9,000, £4,500 training program. And I said, hey, look, I have no money, but I know how to build a team. I've got this volunteer workforce that can help, and I'm skilled at speaking and presenting, and I'd love to come and work for you. So let me come. I don't know where you are, but let me come and work with you for free. I'll move at my own expense to work with you, and let me do a month in exchange for your tuition, your tutorage, and let's see what we can do together. And so we had a bit of a backwards and forwards. And he said, if you're going to come out, let's come out, but you got to do 3 months. And I said, done, I'll be there tomorrow. And I jumped on a plane and I moved overseas to work for a guy I'd never met before. And I left my whole life behind here in search of the opportunity. And I ended up doing 6 months with Chris, and I became his right-hand man. We rebuilt this organization. I recruited 42 staff for him. I was basically his COO. And that gave me the platform to learn how to speak and to sell from stage. And then in July 2013, I came back and launched what is now Wild Success. And as you said, I was 40,000 in debt. I didn't have any money. My first event was at a library, public library. And 12 people in my first seminar, 9 of which were my family members. The rest of them, they were I said, just don't tell them that you know me. And in the first 90 days, we did $100,000 in business, about £50,000. In my first year, I did over $1 million, just over probably £600,000 at the time. And then we've never looked back since. So it's been an incredible journey. But it all started from a random email, a distraction when I was meant to be doing something that I should have been doing, studying, and then a bit of a leap of faith.
Indeed. Again, when a student is ready, a teacher will appear. Clearly explain that. One of the things that I liked about what you've done there is there was a clear vision in what you were trying to do. You wanted to learn what Chris was doing. And that was clear and compelling enough. And once you got there, you got to learn about the strategy, what he was doing, which is exactly what we're talking about. So what you're talking about, what you teach, you actually did, which is one of the things that is important to our audience here, that we just don't talk about these things, we leave them. Now, you have since worked with thousands of people. Would you share maybe one story, maybe one success story or case study of some of the people you've worked, what their lives were like, and what their lives are like after working with you or while you're working with you?
Yeah. Look, I can give you a ton of examples, obviously, over the years, but I know that most of the people listening to this show are business owners. And I think that as business owners, we tend to find ourselves getting trapped in a paradigm of this is what's always worked. And so this is what I'm going to continue to do because this is what I know is successful. But the challenge is when you're in business that, you have a COVID pandemic, you have a change, a transformation, and obviously in the UK with Brexit, that changes everything for you. So it's constantly our ability to adapt and change to the world that we're in. And part of that is to trust in our own abilities, to realize that what got us here won't get us there, but we did indeed get here, so we can go to that next level. And there's no better time than the present to reinvent ourselves. And a client that comes to mind is Bobby and Crystal. These guys are high school sweethearts. They've been married for a long time, and they were in the accounting business. And so Bobby had actually been made redundant in the GFC and the financial crisis of 2008. He then started his own sort of bookkeeping practice, and he had a ton of clients, but as a bookkeeper, it's a very low level job. No disrespect to bookkeepers, but they're not paid a huge amount of money for advice or strategy or high level thinking. And he had aspirations to do that. But if every day you're having a conversation about reconciliation of accounts, it's very different to have a conversation about long-term tax strategy. And they were basically just making enough to get by. Crystal was working in another job because they didn't have enough to support themselves in the business. And they ended up coming to do a personal development event with me. And we helped them really transform from a mindset perspective. good. And then we have a conversation with them about the work that they're doing. And Bobby's like, look, I want to work with different type of clients. I want to charge more money. I want less stress. We're overwhelmed. I've got all these people. And so we had a dialogue around, well, if that's what you want, why don't you consider doubling your prices as a way of being able to remove some of the clientele that you've got, because you can afford to have half the number of clients at twice the price and you'll still be in the same position. But reality is you're also winning because you've got less work to do and you're making more money per client. And you can imagine for somebody that's come from losing their job and their life's on the line, that idea just freaks people out. It's always really interesting when people talk about increasing prices, what that brings up for us around our self-esteem and self-confidence. Sure enough, after some negotiation, that's what we did. We sent an email out and said, hey, we appreciate your business and service as a way of adding more value. These are the things we're now offering. And by the way, this is our new pricing schedule as of the new financial year. And Crystal, I remember, was breaking down in the boardroom, his wife, when we sent this email, because she thought everyone's going to leave us. We have no money. And out of the 200 clients, they lost 12 clients, not 12%, 12 clients. So they still had 180 plus clients on board. They doubled their prices. And then they had a new problem. It didn't solve the problem that they had. The problem was I had too many clients. So, it's just a great example. They've gone on to do some incredible things. She left her job. She works in the business now. They're in the team together. They've then gone on to launch a tax and advisory service to their existing clients as well. And they've started taking that work off existing accountants. But I think the beauty of the story is that everything that we want is on the other side of our fear. For your businesses watching, doubling your prices might not actually be a great strategy, don't get me wrong. But for Bobby and Crystal, they had so many people, but they were doing work that was not reflective of what they could provide. They were doing work and charging based off their self-esteem and self-confidence and self-belief. And often, what you make as a business owner is directly proportionate to your own personal level of self-esteem and self-confidence. Because I promise you, in every market, there is someone less qualified, not doing as well in terms of the quality of the product, that's making way more money because either they're ignorant or confident enough to charge more money than what you are. And when you realize that, it probably pisses you off a little bit, but hopefully it's a bit of a wake-up call, right?
Right. I love that because it paints a great picture of the possibility when you move in the right direction. Let's talk about the equation, which I absolutely love that you have there, and I totally agree with it. And that is when you want to achieve those great big goals that you want or have that wild success, there is a proven formula. There is certain thing that you have to do right and in a certain way for you to get that. And one of those things is what we're about to label out right now. It is when you have a clear, compelling vision and you have right internal alignment, and you follow a proven strategy, the inevitable would happen. You will get the success that you want. And this is something that you truly believes in. How do you define a compelling vision based on the amount of people you've worked and what you've concluded in all these 10 years of working with people?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So most people are quite familiar with SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, etc. And they're great, but they don't change people's lives. And so when we work with our clients, what we tend to find is that people are trapped by the boundary conditions of their thinking, right? Einstein said it so beautifully when he said, you can't solve the problems that you have today with the same level or type of thinking that created them. And so what we're big on is creating a compelling vision for the future. Now, the languaging of that's really important. The first thing is it's a vision. It's not a plan. It's not a checklist. It's not even a strategy. It's just a vision. It's a true north. It's a shining star on the horizon. Whether or not you know how to get there is really not the point. In fact, if you do know how to get there, you've missed the point. The goal is to set a vision that's so far beyond where you are that you can't ask, how do I get there? Because you have no idea. Instead, you've got to ask, who's already been there before and how did they get there? And that creates a whole pattern with regards to proven strategy and mentorship and teaching and training, etc. So the first part is it's got to be a vision on the horizon. And for some people, that might be a 12-month thing, but for some people, it's probably 1,000 days or 10 years. It's designed to be long enough that transformation can really exist. And it gives us an opportunity in that to release any of the current realities of our life and sort of visualize what would we love life to be if we could live life on our own terms, emotionally, physically, financially, spiritually, etc. The second part is it's got to be compelling. A lot of people set goals based on what they think they should do or what they feel like they have to do, not what they really want to do. And it's always staggering to me how many people have no idea what they want to do with their future. And this is, I guess, a symptom of our society, right? We spend a lot of time planning a wedding, but not a marriage. We spend a lot of time planning a holiday, but not our year. And so if you live for the weekend, where energy goes, where focus goes, energy flows, results show. So I knew that to be true from my work around creating a vision for people in their lives. But what was really interesting is I've just finished writing my book. And in that, I did some research and found that people, when they're walking through the wilderness or they're walking through the desert, during the day, they can pretty well navigate because they can use the sun and the sky as a directive point to sort of guide them through this sort of very dense forest and jungle or the desert. But what's really fascinating is, and there's been a number of studies about this, is that as soon as the sun sets, people walk in circles. And as soon as they lose the vision of where they're going, they just literally walk in circles because we're either right or left side dominant. And then as soon as the sun rises again, they start walking again. And so if you're in your business right now and you feel like every year is a bit of Groundhog Day and you're not making any more money, you're not really making a shift, I would probably put it to you that do you really have a compelling vision of what your business could look like and would like to look like if you could have what you want? Or are you sort of trapped in the present reality of where you're at right now? And it becomes very difficult to try to move those things when you embrace, we're in a recession and this is the economy and this is my clients. It doesn't have to be like that. You can transform this at any moment. It just requires you to consciously come up with a vision of what the future looks like.
Indeed. There are so many examples of great companies that have great vision and that we can learn from. In fact, if you're to look at some of the great writers, I can think of this great book that talks about that where there is no vision, people perish. And, where there is no great vision, companies falls down and, they fail. So Bill, if you're listening and maybe you haven't revisited your vision over the last few months, maybe it's time for you to go back and really look at your vision. Is it compelling enough? Is it something that you want to go after? And really, if it's not, wouldn't now be the best time for you to revisit, especially after everything that is going on, and you want to create something that is compelling for your future? Indeed,
it's really difficult if you're in your office and you're dealing with financial pressure and client issues and staff problems and, and the weather outside is rubbish, although at the moment in the UK, it's really nice. You get the idea. So it's difficult when you're in that space to try to visualize because you're like, this is all struggle. How do I create something more than that? So I'm a big believer that the energy that you're in when you set a goal is the same energy you can draw on when you're going to achieve it. So for me personally, that's about changing your state. And that might be changing your state physically by getting into a new environment, but it also might be changing your state by just going somewhere lovely. And so for me, some of the best ideas that I have are when I'm traveling, when I'm on holidays, and I regularly take time throughout the year to go away with my family. We travel a lot anyway, but I make very deliberate time to go away and recalibrate on that vision. Because if you feel exhausted in yourself physically and mentally, it's very hard to think the future is better than the present. So you got to make sure you're filling your own cup. But number two, if you're struggling with where you're at, you got to consider that maybe that's the environment that you're in. And so maybe a change of environment is going to do you really well. And if you don't think you have the time or the energy to do that, well, I would encourage you to, stop selling yourself, because the reality is if you keep going down the path, things are not going to miraculously change by just doing more work. Most of you have been in the game long enough to realize that actually sometimes it's doing more and sometimes it's doing less. So we need to transform our environment. And so I would go away for the weekend, either by yourself or with your wife, your family. I would spend some time, I would journal, I would write down a list of all the things that are great and all the things that are not. What are the things that you'd love to keep and what are the things you'd love to transform? And you don't necessarily need a plan just yet on how you're going to do that, but start with the intention. Right. I think as business owners, we're so used to controlling things and trying to make things happen by our own hands and just driving things. And that's very valuable. There's also a space to create as well to allow things, whether you believe in universe or spirit or whatever, when you allow things to also happen themselves as well by having clear intention of a standard and where we're going, then naturally people gravitate to that or they move away from that. And so you've got to just allow the space for that to happen.
Absolutely love that, man. I love that. But because of our time, let's move on to the second part of the question, which I think is incredible. There are 5 parts to this. This is where we talk about alignment. Are you aligned with your beliefs? And you have a very interesting way of looking and talking about this. Would you talk to everybody, what we mean when you talk about you've got to be self-aligned internally?
Yeah. So having a great vision is fantastic. But if you imagine in a business, it's all about alignment. So if you come up with a vision as a company of this is what we're going to do, but your sales team are not on board, the marketing team's not supporting it, the operations team doesn't think it's going to work, the finance team thinks it's ludicrous. Well, the reality is your team's not going to execute that vision. A great example of this when we talk about in my work, the power of the conscious subconscious mind is a ship and the captain and the crew. Who's really in charge? Is it the captain or is it the crew? Now, the captain says, this is where we're going to go. But if the crew don't believe in that, it's a mutiny and they get thrown overboard, right? And so we need to make sure there's harmony between in a business between the executive team and the work team, right? That needs to be fully in alignment. But the same thing happens inside of you as well. And so when we set goals and dreams and visions, often I'll say to clients, and this is a great question, how much further along in life would you be if you just got out of your own way? And when you think about that in terms of financially or emotionally or in your relationships or your physical body, physical body is a great one. If you said that you're going to go to the gym and eat well, and then you did it, what would you be like? Because most people say they're going to do something and they never follow through on that. And that's an alignment problem. So in our work, we've realized that there are 5 keys, imagine 5 team members towards this. The first one is beliefs. Henry Ford said it better than I ever could. Wherever you think you can or can't, you're usually right. So when you set this vision, if the first thing that you think about is that's not possible, well, then guess what? It's not. So we've got to be aware that our limiting beliefs are going to hold us back. And if we can have empowered beliefs in ourselves and in others that things are going to work in our favor, then that's going to be a real positive start. So beliefs, number 1. Number 2 is emotions. The science on this is really interesting, right? So there's 2,000 words in the English language to describe how we feel. And yet habitually, most people experience just 12 emotions on a daily basis. And the crazy thing is 8 are negative, 4 are positive, and it's the same 12 every day. And so if you're frustrated every day. If you're happy every day. It's not so much what happens in your life as much as who you are. So when you have the vision and you're stagnant emotionally, then you're not going to have the drive and the motivation and the energy, the charisma, the enthusiasm to enroll people in that vision. So that's number 2. Number 3 is our behaviors. We know from some incredible work from people like James Clear with Atomic Habits or Charles Duhigg from Habit Why We Do What We Do and How to Change It, that it takes some time to ingrain new habits and routines and rituals and sort of to unwind the habits that we've got. So if your vision is, I'm going to go in this direction, but your habits are taking you in another direction, we've got to try to align that. So you're now acting in alignment with that. Then we've got our focus. People have been conditioned, especially during difficult times, that you don't get in life what, the world is not as it is, the world is as you are. So if you've conditioned yourself through the difficulties of COVID, that everything is not going very well, and then you've got a story that you keep telling yourself that the economy's not going well, the client's not going well, the team's not going well, well, soon, irrelevant of the reality of that, that's all you're going to see because that's all you focus on. So we've got to shift our focus and perspective. I don't mean live in la la land and not be realistic or clear on the reality, but in every moment there is crisis and opportunity. So we've got to make sure we're training our brain to focus on what we want. And then the final thing is probably the most complex. It's the most subconscious, is our values. So you tend to find that people will identify as being motivated or not motivated. The reality is we're neither motivated nor motivated, but motivation is a proxy for personal values. So if you've got some things in your business right now or in your life and you go, I'm really motivated to do these things, but I'm not motivated to do the other things, it's not that you need willpower. It's just that the things that are motivating to you are things that are in alignment with your higher values. And if you do those things, I call these the get-tos. I get to do these things. But the other things in life are things that you've got to do out of obligation. And part of that is just being a responsible business owner. But the other part of that is going, well, they're not in alignment with my values. Can I find somebody in my team who those things are in alignment with their values? And then therefore we're working towards our personal strengths. So they're the 5 things: beliefs, emotions, behaviors, focus, and values. And if you can get all of those in alignment with where you're headed, or at least at a basic level, not in competition or in conflict with where you're headed, well, then what you're going to find is actually, and we've all had this experience in life, you'll find that you're in flow with life, if you want to use that buzzword, or at least you're not self-sabotaging your own success. And I'm sure everyone's had the experience where things were just happening. You were cooking with gas. You were heading in the right direction. It felt like Life was happening for you, not to you. You were being pulled by life rather than pushing life. That's the juxtaposition that we're talking about.
I love how you have simplified those key areas, and I'm sure Bill is taking notes on those ones. And I know there will be other people that maybe are still looking at, okay, I haven't figured out my beliefs right. My emotions are not yet there. My behavior still needs a lot of improvement. There's all these ones. And they want to know where they can get started, because this is a great goal to be working towards. If you were to talk to somebody who is thinking, you know what, I don't know, I'm not even aligned in any of these, which one should I start on, and how do I go about making that happen?
Yeah, great question. Great question. So some of these are internal and some of these are more present externally. So I'll give you an example. How you feel and what you do in terms of your behaviors, you tend to be most conscious of those things. We tend to be less conscious of our focus and our beliefs and our values. So I'd probably start with the low-hanging fruit, which is what you're doing and how you're feeling. And a simple reference point for this, and by the way, I want everyone to be aware, if you feel like, geez, I'm out of alignment in all of those areas, let's not underestimate the significance of just making one simple change in one area of your life. It's not going to change everything, but it's the precursor. I've got a rule, which hopefully this helps for everybody, is I call it the 3-day rule. And there's times in life where everything is just shit. Sorry for my language, where things are not working well. You're fighting with your partner. Your body's not where you want it to be. You're not training. You feel stressed. You're tired, all that stuff. If you can just commit to 3 days of showing up in a more positive way, whether that means you go for a walk, you get into the gym, you drink more water, you get a better sleep, you're in a loving demeanor, then what happens is after 3 days, not really a lot changes, but your perspective of things change, and then therefore your momentum to move forward. So if you were to start with behaviors, first thing I would get you to do is, rather than trying to add more stuff in, try to take some stuff out. We're already overworked as business owners anyway. You're already pretty much at full capacity. So I would do a quick audit and I would look at, what have I done with my time? Where am I at? And if you were to spend the last week or 2 weeks, I tend to find that if you were to do a snapshot of how people spend their time, their money, and their energy over, say, a 90-day window, that's a pretty good indication of what the trajectory of their life is on. So do a quick audit. It'll only take you a couple of minutes before work, and just go, okay, well, what have I done this last couple of weeks? And out of all of those things, what are the things that genuinely matter and what are the things that don't matter? And where am I wasting time? And where am I doing things that are going to set me up personally to win? You'd be there for your team, you'd be there for your partner, you'd be there for your kids, but you got to make sure you're there for yourself as well. You got to fill your own cup, put your own oxygen mask on first. So if you're not exercising and training, that is a fantastic thing to start to do. If you're not starting the day by at least getting clear on doing some personal growth, whether that be listening to a podcast like this, for example, or doing some writing, for example, it doesn't have to be a lot, but it needs to be a little bit, just to allow yourself to bring a high level of awareness. One of the things that I've discovered is that awareness precedes change.
That's right.
Awareness precedes change. So if you're not aware of where you're not heading in the right direction, if you're not aware of your behaviors or your emotions, you're going to struggle. So the first one is just create some awareness and just create space. This always really fascinated me. Bill Gates has in his calendar huge blocks of time.
Yes.
Where all he's dedicated to doing is just thinking. He's just dedicated to thinking. And so Vern Harnish talks about this idea in terms of behaviors, that the top 50 CEOs on the planet have two things in common. One is that they read an average of 24 books or 26 books a year, so a book every 2 weeks. So that's number one. And number two is that they allocate time every week just to think. And so if you allocate more space just to think and to self-evaluate and to self-analyze, you'll have a shorter feedback cycle, and that will improve your behaviors anyway. Because if you realize, hey, I'm doing this and it's not working, you'll make a change. So that's behaviors. In terms of emotions, this is a really powerful tool, which is every hour on the hour, and you only really need to do this for about 2 or 3 days, but every hour on the hour while you're awake, have an alarm. And in that alarm, all it does, I want you to write this down, is just 3 things. How am I feeling? And what am I focused on? And what am I going to do next? How am I feeling? What am I focused on? What am I going to do next? First 2 questions are reflective. The third question is proactive. So in this moment, when the alarm goes off, quick check. How do I feel right now? And just make a little note of that. What you're looking to try and do is you're trying to timestamp your day emotionally. So emotions are transient. They're like clouds on a breezy afternoon, right? They come and they go, but we tend to find that we get stuck in habits that keep reinforcing certain emotional patterns. So if you realize, geez, I've been frustrated for 3 hours, maybe it's a good idea that you go for a walk, right? Maybe it's a good idea you change your state. So first, what am I feeling? Second one is, what am I focused on? Because if you focus on certain things, it's going to expand that. If you realize, hey, when I focus on my family, I'm feeling really positive. I'm feeling really excited. I'm feeling full of joy, full of love. Focus more on that. Have more triggers in your life for that. If I'm frustrated because I keep focusing on the finances, well, then fix them or do something different about it or batch that time so you're not frustrated all the time, right? So, there's the emotion and focus as a part. And then the third part is, what am I going to do now? That gives you an opportunity to be conscious about what's about to happen. Most people are not conscious. They're in the emotion, they're focusing on things, and they're just repeating that cycle because they're not aware. But if you can break out of that state and observe that and go, how am I feeling? What am I focused on? Okay, what am I going to do now? It invites an opportunity for you to choose a new empowered behavior. And as soon as you realize that actually most people have very similar patterns day to day that trigger them positively and negatively, then you can start to create some conscious control and incorporate some more of those into your life. And here's some low-hanging fruit. Your office environment, wherever you do your work, and that doesn't matter if it's a desk or whether that's a plane seat if you're traveling, or whether that's a car if you're driving around, you need to be tremendously intentional about the environment that you've got, because that's where you're going to spend most of your time. And so if you're spending most of your time there, you've got to make sure you've got a ton of little references that remind you of how great your life is, of what you're doing this for. There's a beautiful example of just having your kid's photo on the desk, right? That helps, but you can be way more than that. Everything around you is an opportunity to remind you of, hey, I've done some great stuff. I'm a great person. I've got good stuff inside of me. The goals I've got are going to take everything I've got, but I've got what it takes. And this is what I'm doing it for. And these are how we're reminding and celebrating ourselves. And so you don't need a shrine per se, but all you want to do is have an environment that's constantly triggering the emotions that you want to have to be successful and to live your best life. And that just requires a little bit of energy and a little bit of creativity, but it's going to make a big impact long term.
You know what, Kevin, you are touching on some of the great aspects of making a success right here. And I absolutely love that. And we'd definitely love to have you back here to perhaps dive deep into some more aspects of that. But before we go, we want to touch on the last part of our strategy, of our equation. Remember, Bill, if you're following, we said you have to have a compelling vision. You have to be in alignment. And the last part here is all about a proven strategy. How do you find that proven strategy? Once you have that proven strategy and you put all these things out, it is inevitable for you to get the total success that you need. Talk to us here, Kelvin, in your experience, because there has been so many strategies you've seen, but there are certain that are proven. How do you go about finding that proven strategy?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is that most people that do well in business traditionally don't do well in schools. And there's a reason for that. The school system, like it or love it or hate it, is conditioning people from a very young age to think independently and individually. And so if I've got a test or if I'm working towards something, and let's say Joe is great at math and I'm not great at math, if I ask Joe for guidance, advice, or the answer to question 3, that's called cheating. But in life and business, it's called collaboration, joint ventures, strategic partners, or mentors, right? So the first thing is, if you do this protocol properly, you create a vision for the life that is so beyond you that you don't know how you're going to get there. And that's purposeful, because if you do know, you probably mess it up. See, most people are walking around making it up as they go along, and they've got a hope and pray plan. They hope it goes well and they pray nothing goes wrong. What we want to do is have a proven strategy. And that really, as a shortcut, is about finding a mentor. Will Smith talks about this idea that he said to his son, Jaden, that there's not a problem you'll ever deal with in life that someone hasn't already solved and written a book about. So how do we find a way to turn decades into days? It's by having mentors or partners in that journey. And so that's what I did with Chris Howard. That's how I got started. I did that apprenticeship. I transferred that knowledge, and now we're off to the races, right? So the first step is to realize, and I like to use this metaphor because I think it really beautifully encapsulates this. If you have a favorite dessert, right? Let's say you go to a beautiful restaurant in London, you have a beautiful meal, and you decide, I'm going to come home and I'm going to make that meal. Like I had a fantastic tiramisu, for example, and I'm going to come home and I'm going to make that. And let's say you've never made that before. Well, what you wouldn't do is you wouldn't just randomly grab ingredients from the fridge and the cupboard and chuck them in the blender and put that in the oven and hope for the best, right? We would never do that. What you would do instead is you would find a recipe online, you would get an ingredients list, you'd follow a method, and you would execute that as best you can. And then you probably wouldn't get it perfect, but you'd learn from it and then you'd try again, right? But yet in business, we think that, hey, I've never grown a £1 million business or a £10 million business or even a £100,000 business, but I'm going to just somehow figure that out on my own. Well, it doesn't happen like that. And if you're not great at social media, it's not like you're just going to somehow blow up and go viral. There's a strategy for that. And so in everything that we do, if we have the humility to acknowledge that we don't need to know the answers ourselves, in fact, if we do, then we're probably not playing a big enough game. And instead, rather than asking, how do I do something? You instead ask the question, who has already done this before and how did they do it? Well, then you have the ability of learning from their mistakes, because anyone that's been in business long enough realizes that there's a lot of things for you to do, but not all of them matter that much.
That's right.
And so the goal is really, what are the major things, right? Robin Sharma once said, don't major in minor things. Don't major in minor things. And so when you start, you think you're going to do all of these things. But in reality, if you to go to the next level, it's probably just about focusing on a couple of key things and doing that really well, not doing everything. This is what's commonly known as the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule. But it's difficult for you to know what that is without the experience. You can sort of buy that experience quite literally through mentorship or support or guides. And that's in every area of your life. So it's really just about finding those key distinctions that make the difference. And then you get more done in less time. You become more successful and more prolific in your work. You're not feeling burned out because you're working a plan that you know is going to work. And therefore, you can just focus on being in the moment and flawlessly executing on it rather than figuring out, am I doing the right things or not?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We believe greatly in mentorship. Why reinvent the wheel when the wheel is already there? And
100%.
Here on the show, we have presented to you some incredible amount, which include Kelvin himself here. If you want to know something or you want to achieve a particular goal, find somebody who has already achieved it and just go learn from them and implement the proven strategy. Just trust the process and trust the system. And you know what? You could get the same success they are getting. Kelvin, we have come to the end of our time together here, but man, what a masterclass you've delivered there. Truly appreciate your generosity in sharing your knowledge and your decade of learning these things and teaching them. What a privilege we have. And thank you for that, man.
Thank you.
Now, for those who wants to further learn from you or maybe enroll in some of your programs or even attend your virtual workshops, like on your website there, where can they find you or where can they find these places?
Yeah, well, I'm on social media at Calvin Coyles. I've got my new book coming out in a couple of weeks as well, Wild Success, which is basically what we've talked about today, compelling vision, internal alignment, and proven strategy. So we'll give you guys a link to that. And they can just go to wildsuccess.global and they'll find all the information online.
Incredible. We'll put that link as well below this recording so that you can do that. One final thought from you, from a business owner to another business owner. What keeps you going among all these things that you're doing? Compelling vision, alignment, proven strategies. What keeps you going? There's so much things that are happening and trying to stop everyone like you and I from going after our goals.
Yeah. I was very fortunate a couple of years ago to become a dad. So I've got a 2-year-old little girl, Alila Ray, and my wife is pregnant with our second child due in September. So I'll have 2 girls under 2 in a couple of months. And for me, there's been a real shift since I've become a father. And for me, it's about legacy. And I think for a lot of people watching this and listening to this, that they're also interested in legacy. But here's probably what I would share for all of you. I've worked with a lot of people that want to achieve financial success, but don't realize that it's actually the process of how you go about that that's more important to your kids than whether or not you make it to the top of the mountain. So for me now, my wife and I are very fortunate financially. We've made a lot of money in the last decade. We've changed a lot of lives. But for me, I want my girls to see their dad doing what he was put on the planet to do, striving to be better, trying to use his gifts and talents to make people's lives better, and doing that in a way that can create a sense of abundance for us. So that's very much about, for me now, is trying to be an example for my girls, and I believe I'm doing that. And that's what keeps me going. It's about climbing new mountains and being able to create a bigger vision for people and for my life, and by doing that, also helping people as well. So that's what keeps me going.
Outstanding, absolutely outstanding. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
There you have it,
thank you
ladies
so
and
much.
gentlemen. You're welcome. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. If you really want to create wild success, you now know who to go and find more information and learn from. The links are below this audio recording, and maybe on YouTube, you'll be able to find that. Like we always say, how you do anything is how you do everything. If you take time to learn and be a master in one area, guess what? You might become a master in another area. Just a thought. But I know from my personal experience that when you learn and you do something right and you follow these steps that we talked about, you have 99% chance of succeeding, because it has been proven over and over and over again. Without taking much of our time, I wanted to bring to your attention, our book is out, as you already know, 8 Qualities for Great Leadership. You can get this one from Amazon or anywhere where the books are sold. We had some amazing contributors in there, like Elaine Slater, Trevor Stockwell, Kerry Wakelo, Rick Mayo, Kylie Van Leeuwen, who is amazing, Anastasia and Danjo, who are all amazing leaders in their own right. We want you to go get that book from Amazon. And if you've got any question, reach out to the community. And finally, we want you to go to our directory. If you are a coach or a consultant and you want people to find out more about you, just go register on our directory. We are promoting that because we want people to do that. And if you're looking for the right person to help you, there on the directory, Yokai directory, again, you see the link below this recording. And just go there and you find the amazing people we have. And that's it really from us and from Calvin and my dear friend Joe here. We want to wish you all the success. Until next time, live well, live with passion. Know that the best is truly, truly yet to come. Thank you, gentlemen. Goodbye for now. Thank you for tuning in to Yokai Business Show. We hope you have enjoyed today's episode and have gained valuable insights and inspiration from our amazing guest. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review to help us spread the word. Also, be sure to check out our Leadership Ultimate Success Mastermind program, which is designed to help you and leaders in our community to do great things and support each other along their leadership journey. Until next time, live well, live with passion, know that the best is truly yet to come.